Okay, so now we're on the ride Dinosaur, and we are going to capture a dinosaur and bring it back to class. So let's look and see. I'm getting on.
Commencing in T-minus 10 seconds and counting.
This is Seeker. Listen up. We've got to get in, grab the Iguanodon, and get out before that asteroid hits. Let's roll! Okay, now, let's go get that dino. Computer, what are you tracking?
Styracosaurus.
Not our dino.
Warning, meteor shower in range.
Just little ones.
Oleoramus. Hadrosaur. Raptor.
Time to get serious. Lock autopilot on homing signal now! Hang on! I'm tracking a big dino on the scope. Could be ours. Computer, full stop. Identified.
Carnotaurus.
Definitely not our dino. Go, go, go! Another big guy coming up. Computer, slow and identify.
Sauropod.
Still not our dino, but at least this one's a vegetarian. Whoops.
Asteroid impact in 90 seconds.
We better move it.
Pterodactyl.
Incoming!
Asteroid impact in 60 seconds.
We can't stop now. Keep going, keep going.
Compsognathus.
Computer, what's happening?
Loss of traction.
Four-wheel drive, move it!
Warning, meteor strike.
Evasive maneuver! Right! Left! Right! Left! That was close. Computer, now what?
Carnotaurus.
That's it! Abort mission! Abort! Abort!
Iguanodon.
Forget it! Get them out now!
Asteroid impact.
Brace yourself! This is it! They're not gonna make it! They're not gonna make
Mission accomplished.
That was great.
it! You made it! I knew you would, and guess who made it back with you? I better find it before security does. Thanks for everything!
Hi guys, it's Miss Meyer with another episode of the Miss Meyer Show. So today what we're going to talk about is Chapter 9, Part 2. And that is going to be on page, I had to think about it for a second. That's going to be on pages 341 to 352. So we got a lot to cover today. So, and I don't want to have any copyright infringements from people like the BBC, like they did me before. So I'm going to actually have to go over it with you. So bear with me. And if I do just cough or sneeze, whatever, I'm just still not feeling well. I wasn't feeling well this week. So just bear with me. Just listen to my coughing or whatever. I'm trying not to, but in the event that I do, just bear with me. So, all right. So we're going to begin with World War II. Now, World War II would have never begun, really, I think, if it weren't for World War I. World War I set the stage for World War II. And because of the fact that, well, let me just give you a quick rundown of it. So in World War I, it was America and England, France, they fought against Germany. Germany was the big instigator in World War I. Well, Hitler was a soldier in World War I for the Germans. And so after World War I ended, the other countries, the Allied countries, had told Germany, since you were the one that started this whole war, you were the one that, pushed it and got in everybody's faces, and you were the one that did this. You're the one that's going to pay the price. You are the one that's going to sit there and you're going to, make amends. So they made Germany pay for the war, because they were the ones really that started it all. So because of them, they felt, it was their fault, so they made them pay for the entire war. Well, this was obviously, this was a huge amount of money that Germany did not have. And so the way that they were going to get the money was by taxing people and by, taxing them ridiculously to get the money to do so. And Hitler, at this time, after the war was over, he returned to Germany. He was an artist. He was not making a lot of money, and so he saw that he get a lot of animosity. He was really angry. He was like, that's so unfair that we're having to do this. And he saw lots and lots and lots of his fellow Germans that they were struggling as well. And, they were having their own issue after World War I. The Depression. Remember, like I said, I'm trying to fix my hair. It's insane. Sorry, it looks like this. That's the best I can do. So he saw when the Depression hit that a lot of his fellow countrymen were truly starving. But unlike, reasonable people, Adolf Hitler was saying, well, this is all the fault of the Jews. Because he saw that while there were many people that were starving and didn't have a lot of ways of food or clothing or whatever, he saw in his mind and said, oh, the Jewish people seem to have the money. They're the ones whose businesses aren't failing. They're the ones that are surviving this depression. And so he turned all of his animosity towards one group of people. He started to believe in his own mind, because he was really mentally deranged, that the Germans, the Aryan race, the Germans were above everyone else, that they were the number one superior race, and that the dominance of the Germans would come again. And it was because of this animosity that Hitler had that he started going out and speaking. Now, Hitler, he was a good speaker. He was very charismatic. He had the ability to get people to listen to him and to believe in him. One of the big things that he was saying, there's a lot of the people in Germany, we talked about perceptions. And we talked about that with FDR and Huey Long. Well, Hitler was going around to all these Germans who were struggling, who were starving, who were just basically saying, it's our fault. They were down in the dumps. A depression was hitting the entire world. And on top of that, Germany had to pay reparations, which was even extra money. So he was going around to places to talk to German people who were dealing with this and building them up, but also filling them with hate, saying that, the German race is better than this, and we're the best race that's out there. We're the, premier number one superior race, and every other person in the world should bow down to us. I mean, so while he was, giving them a pep talk kind of thing, he was filling them with a lot of hate and a lot of vitriol and a lot of just mob mentality. And it became the point that Hitler had so many people that were following him that he was able to run and take over the German government. So he started off just by being this artist. He was a ex-soldier who was literally a starving artist in Germany, and went around and got people to listen to him and say, hey, this is not right. We're better than this. But including that, in addition to that, he was filling them with so much hate and so much rage that he had so many people that were just willing to follow him that he was able to take over control of the German government. In World War I, there was a king. There was a king of Germany called Kaiser Wilhelm. Now, after Germany lost World War I, that king just went into hiding. He was no longer heard of. So they did have kind of a pseudo-democracy. But when Hitler comes around, he takes control over the entire government, total control. And he starts his like reign of madness of, Aryans are that Germans were the, the most wonderful thing. And he started his campaign against the Jews in his own country. Well, Germany really even wasn't his own country. He wasn't even born in Germany. But, that's a whole nother issue. He started there. And then as he expanded, as he decided he wanted to take over additional places. He didn't want just Germany. He wanted Austria. He wanted Hungary. He wanted all the places that Germany had lost in World War I. Then he wanted France. Then he wanted England. Then he wanted all these places. And eventually he was going to try and come to America. So it was Hitler's kind of... Now, I'm not going to say that World War II would have never happened if Hitler had not fought in World War I, but I am saying that World War I and Hitler fighting in it really pushed forward the agenda, I think, that drove Hitler to start all this. And the reason that we fought in World War II really was because of Hitler and his allies. So this is how America gets involved. I hope you're following me. I know I'm kind of mellow, but I'm not feeling that great. So anyway, so Hitler... he decides that he's taking over all these countries, right? He's going for Germany. He's going for, well, he's already got Germany. He's got Germany. He's got Austria, Hungary. He's got Poland. He's got Romania. He's got all these places in Europe. He is taking over all of these places in Europe. Well, it gets so big of a kind of a mission, he decides he's going to have to kind of partner up with some people because he's taking over lots and lots and lots of places. So countries, little countries that see Hitler's takeover, they're like, okay, well, maybe if we want to avoid Hitler coming to take over our country, maybe we could, if you can't beat him, join him kind of mentality. And Italy and Japan joined Hitler as allies, and they became known as the Axis allies, or the Axis powers, excuse me. They were the Axis powers. So you got Germany, Italy, Russia, and Japan. They are the Axis powers. And these three people, their goal was to take over the world. Truly, that was their goal. Now, Hitler, in his mind, of course, thought that he was much more superior, and the Germans were much more superior than the Italians or the Japanese. And if he would have succeeded in his plan, I don't think he would have left them alone. They would have been taken over just as much, okay? But in the war, you had the Axis powers, Germany, Japan, and Italy, okay? So it was Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, and Emperor Hirohito of Japan. These were your three people that were the Axis powers. Now, America at this time did not want to get involved. We had just went through World War I, and the people were suffering with the depression was hitting. And so when we're getting news that all of this fighting is going on over in Europe, the people of America are saying, that's not our battle. That has nothing to do with us. Right now, we need to be worried about what's going on at home. We've got people starving in the streets. We've got all kinds of stuff happening. We can't go put our attention on what's happening a continent away. The people of America need our focus. So the majority of people were like, I don't want to be involved in this war. Keep us out. Keep us out. And well, that's one of the ways that the war really spurred America out of the Great Depression, because we were neutral in the beginning. Because of that, these countries, the Allied countries, which were England, France, different little places that eventually all got taken over by Hitler. England was the only one that had not. And Russia, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But they were saying, okay, so we're in this war. We're fighting Hitler. You may not be in this war, but we are. So England and France, assuredly, because especially Hitler was right there in Germany. He was right on their doorsteps. So we were the ones supplying the ammunition. We were the ones supplying the planes and the tanks and the bullets and the guns. We were supplying the food and the material for uniforms and shoes, and all these things were coming from us because they couldn't do it right now. They were getting destroyed with Hitler. So they needed someone else that could do this, to do it safely, to do a very good job, and could get it to us. So when the war started and America became like, the Walmart for the war effort, is when we really started out of this depression. Now, we did not want to get involved, like I said, and Roosevelt saw what was happening over in Europe, and so he was really kind of friendly with England. I mean, he knew that the American people didn't want to get involved, so England at the time was getting, like, especially after France fell. I mean, oh my goodness, when France was taken over by the Nazis, was like, France and England are like this. They're like close cousins. They're like Louisiana and Texas, like it's right there. So when that was happening, the Prime Minister of England, Winston Churchill, was calling up FDR and saying, listen, FDR, I need some help and I don't have any money. Tell me what you can do. Okay? So FDR knew that England was one of America's biggest allies. So he's like, okay, so we've got to protect England. They don't have any money to pay for the tanks or the weaponry or anything. Okay, big deal. I'm going to send it to you anyway. So he sends it to England and he says, listen, I'm going to lend it to you. I'm going to lease it to you and you pay me back when you can. Even though it was probably never going to be able to do that. Or I don't know if they ever did. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. So we were kind of on the DL helping England because France was taken over and now they were next. They knew that they were next. Hitler was bombing England, constantly bombing them daily, almost daily, nightly, constant to try to get them to surrender. And so it was like crazy in England. Parents were so scared that their kids were going to die, especially in like London and stuff, that they would put little tags on them and they would have special train cars that would come and pick up your kids and just go deliver them to some random couple or whatever out in the middle of the country. You know, they had to volunteer for it. They just go drop off kids at your doorstep, like ring the bell and then leave. And they would say, hey, can you take care of these kids? Because they're not safe in London. So like, especially in the big countries. I mean, the big cities like London, you definitely didn't want to have your kids there. Definitely. So, so America, like I said, this time, we still did not want to get involved. We still were like, hey, keep us out of this. We don't want any kind of dealings with this, anything like that. And so eventually, though, we do become involved. And that's only because one of Germany's friends, one of the Axis powers, which is Japan, decides that they're going to drop some bombs on us at a naval base in Hawaii called Pearl Harbor. The Germans did not come after us. It wasn't the Germans, it was the Japanese. And so the Japanese, who were allies with Germany, decided that they were going to come and bomb us on Pearl Harbor. Now, we didn't know, but there's conspiracy theories, of course, that say, yes, we did know, blah, 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 but, we'll talk about that later in class. But there's conspiracy theories about everything. So when Japan did this, we did not know this. We had no idea that this was going to happen. The soldiers weren't even ready for it. I mean, it was right before Christmas. And it was just, they were all relaxing. It wasn't even on a normal day that they would be out there working or anything like that. And all of a sudden, Japan comes and bombs us like crazy. Well, once this happens, FDR goes to Congress. Because remember, he can't declare war without Congress's approval. We have a representative democracy. The president can't just say, oh, I'm going to do this, and it happen. He can't. Even if he issues an executive order, there are still things in play that make it so that it can't immediately go through. So right after this happens, FDR goes before Congress and asks them to vote to declare war on Japan. And then, okay, so they said, yes, we're going to declare war on Japan. We need to do that. And then right after we declared war on Japan, Germany declared war on us. We declared war on Germany. And then by in facto, Italy. So Pearl Harbor is what got us involved in World War II. It was Pearl Harbor, but with the Japanese. Now, in America, once this war starts, people are going like crazy. If y'all ever seen Captain America, remember? And I really hate all those superhero movies. I really think they're dumb. I do. I'm sorry. I think they're stupid. I don't like TV to begin with, and I don't like really any movies that were made anytime this, I don't know, in the last 70, 80 years. Maybe 70 years. But The one that I have sat through. I could say that because I don't even want to give it saying that I like it, but the one that I have sat through was Captain America, only because it was set in like the 1930s and 40s, and that's only the first one. I think I've seen the second one. I don't know. I can't remember. Obviously, it didn't do very much for me because I don't remember it. But when you remember in the first Captain America, where they're all running to enlist in the army, and Steve is like this kind of scrawny little guy, and he wants to enlist so badly, and they just won't take him. And all these people are like going and running, and his friends over there, and they're getting involved in the military. It was like that. One thing, the reason being was that after World War I, when the soldiers came home and they started telling their kids, because the soldiers that fought in World War I were old. Hitler was an older guy, okay? He wasn't some young guy. But they would come home and they would tell these stories to their sons and be like, yeah, and I did this. And like, you talk to any little boy, I guess, about something, lying in the dirt and shooting guns and doing all this stuff, and they're like, oh, really? I want to do it too. So when the war started, there was this huge fervor to sign up and to join the military and to fight for your freedom. It was like pandemonium sign up. My grandfather, he signed up for World War II when he wasn't even old enough. He lied about his age to go because he couldn't wait to go. Okay, because that's how excited a lot of people were. Well, in doing this, they left behind a lot of people. And most of those people were women. So when the young men that were working in the factories, they were working in all kinds of jobs. I mean, Clark Gable fought in World War II, Elvis Presley, you can think Frank Sinatra. I mean, all these people were fighting in World War II. JFK's brother was fighting in World War II. I mean, all these even like big actors and politicians, they were fighting in this war. They were going to fight and sign up. So, they went, I'm losing my train of thought. So they were, when they went to go fight in this war, the women were the ones left behind. And there were all these jobs that still needed to be done. They still needed the tanks. They still needed the ammunition. They still needed the food. They still needed the textiles. They needed all of those kind of things. And there's nobody to do it because the men are all gone. Well, remember we talked about perceptions, and we talked about how they had told Eleanor Roosevelt, why aren't you a decent lady and staying home and taking care of your kids and your husband? And she was like, what are you talking about? Are you out of your box? Now, all of a sudden, they're telling women, go to work. You can do it. This is when the Rosie the Riveter was big. So women were hearing in their heads for decades, really. Hey, stay at home, take care of the kids. That's your role. That's your job. You're not smart enough to do this. You can't handle this. Blah, 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 blah. Then all of a sudden World War II happens, and here comes the women, and they're saying, hey, women, get in there and fill in those roles. Hey, women, join us on the battlefield as nurses. I mean, it was just like the women are like, okay. Well, you had some women that were like, oh my goodness, I couldn't bear to do it. But a majority of women were like, all right, our time has come. And they went in there and they did not just do a good job, the job, but they did it well. They were rocking and rolling. They were the ones that were building these planes. They were the ones that were building the ships, the tanks, the ammunition, making the weaponry, getting the all these things together. It was the women. So it was us, girls, who were keeping things afloat at home so that they could fight overseas. It was a really big deal. And another thing, too, which really changed with World War II, was the way that African Americans were involved. Now, African Americans did fight in some segregated troops. There were your white troops and then there were your black troops and things like that. They did do that. The Tuskegee Airmen in the Air Force were some of the greatest fighters, airline in World War II, but they were a segregated unit of African American soldiers. So, but in World War II, African Americans had the opportunity to do jobs that they never could have done before. They were serving in the military as captains, lieutenants, commanders, all these things. Now, in an African-American segregated unit, the civil rights had not happened, and they were still segregating things. So the whole world's up in flames. Hitler's trying to take over the world, and we still have people saying, oh, no, we've got to have segregation. Come on, for real? I mean, I'm like, what? Are you, whatever. But anyway, so it was a gain. Although it wasn't a full gain, it was a gain. And what another thing is that African Americans here at home that could not fight, or that, you know, men and women, now that all the men were gone and they were fighting, the able-bodied men were gone and fighting in Europe, they had access to jobs here at home that they never would have had access to before. Careers in medicine, in law, in academics and education and science, things that they had always been like, oh, no, we don't want any kind of black people in or nothing. We don't want any of that. We don't want any women. We don't want any African Americans. No. All of a sudden, these guys are gone. Guess what they're saying? We need you. Come on. So this was what World War II did. It opened up a whole new kind of visual screen for so many people. In America, because Japan was the one to bomb us, we set up our own internment camps, kind of like, you know, not like the concentration camps. I mean, basically it was. We took a bunch of people that were Japanese Americans, and we were really scared that they were going to spy on us and call back their friends in Japan and say, hey, the Americans are doing this. In fact, that was why my grandfather, because my grandfather's from the Philippines, which is an island near Japan and all that, Moana. I call my kids baby Moana, Katie, my middle one, because she looks like that. So my grandfather is from the Philippines. Therefore, when he was in the Navy, a lot of people didn't want to serve with him. And they said, you know, we don't want to serve with him because he's Japanese. And then he's like, no, I'm Filipino, you know. But he faced a lot of racism for that. And in America, there was a lot of fear that anyone of any Asian race was going to like spy on America. So there were these internment camps where they took the Japanese families, the whole family, and they would place them to live in these camps. Well, what they did there, I mean, it was totally wrong, completely wrong. We're over there fighting tyranny over in Germany and what they're doing to the Jews, and we're kind of, I mean, it's wrong. But what they did is when they put all of these families in these internment camps, for many Asian Americans, especially the young Asian Americans, this was their first kind of exposure to American culture, because even though they lived in America, they lived in an Asian American family. And as someone who is partially Asian, I can tell you that the Asian culture is very, very tight knit. And if you are completely 100% in a culture in Asia, especially Japanese culture, it's very closed and tight knit. So even though they lived in the United States, they were not, I guess, kind of, you know, like your typical Western American. And so, but when they put them in these internment camps, the young Asian Americans were, from the soldiers that were watching them, were learning English. Some of them didn't speak English. They were learning about movies, movies and music. They were learning about politics. They were questioning authority. They were saying, oh, well, maybe I want to make my own decisions and things like that. So even though it was totally wrong what was going on with these internment camps as far as the United States was using them, it did open up a whole new world to Asian Americans. So this war, World War II, kind of was like the gateway to freedom, not total freedom, but more freedoms, I should say, for women, African Americans, and Asian Americans. More, you know, it exposed them to things that never before were they able to have. Okay? Now, sorry, Jimmy, wait. I'm sorry. Okay. Now, going over, now Louisiana, we had a lot of people that volunteered to fight in Louisiana, a ton of people that volunteered to fight. Like I said, my grandfather, he was in New Orleans and he volunteered to fight. But one of the ways that we were so influential was that we had places here in Louisiana where they trained military members to go and fight overseas. See, the majority of Americans, now we did have Americans over there on D-Day that stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, and did all these things in Europe. But a lot of the Americans went to go and fight in the Pacific against the Japanese. Because remember, it was the Japanese who attacked us. My grandfather fought on a U.S. naval ship called the Antietam that was going into the Pacific to fight the Japanese, because they were the ones that attacked us. So when the soldiers needed to train, because it was going to be, you know, some hand-to-hand combat, Japan and over there, you know, in Asia, the continent of Asia is a very humid, arid climate. Very, very wet, damp, lots of kind of moisture, things like that, that a lot of soldiers, especially up in the Midwest and up north, are not used to. But guess what? In Louisiana, you want to talk about humidity and dampness and rainfall and all of the different kinds of things, swamps and wetlands. Guess what, Louisiana? We know all about that. So they set up these training places in Louisiana to train these soldiers for going to fight overseas, for doing that, okay? And they called these things the Louisiana maneuvers. So we were vitally important in training our soldiers to go and fight overseas. Now the problem was that, like I said, the Japanese culture is very close-knit, they're very like traditional, lots of tradition, and they're extraordinarily, like, they believe in like your family honor and pride and all these things. So when Hitler, after D-Day, when, you know, they stormed the beaches of Normandy and all these other kind of things, it was obvious to Hitler that they were going to lose, that Hitler was going to lose. And Hitler is a sore loser, okay? He's like my 5-year-old. You play a game, you have to let her win, because she's going to freak out if she doesn't win. Seriously. Like, if you play any game with her and she loses, you're like, ah! I mean, it's bad. But anyway, so when Hitler, you know, sees that the end for him is near, he goes and commits suicide, and Germany surrenders. Well, Germany surrenders, Italy, that's already done with, but Japan refuses to surrender. They're like, no, we will stay and stand our ground. We are not going to surrender. Well, the United States is like, okay, you know, you dropped your bombs on me, right? You came and you dropped bombs on Pearl Harbor. Well, I'm going to drop a bomb on you. Now, I'm not glorifying the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb was a serious weapon that killed and massacred so many innocent people. It was not just a bomb like was dropped on Pearl Harbor. This was a nuclear explosion that literally decimated the entire cities, okay? Pearl Harbor is one little bitty bit, like, okay? So if I'm going to give you an example, I don't want to write in my textbook any more than I already do. Don't write in you don't even have one, so don't worry about it. But I own this one, so don't worry about it. Okay, so this is Pearl Harbor. It's a little bitty dot in Hawaii, okay? You know, it's bigger than that, but that's what I mean. When we dropped our bombs, we were dropping a massive bomb that was going to affect massive amounts of people because it was a nuclear explosion. Okay? Not only did it kill people, it literally incinerated their bodies. Like, if you're watching, I don't know if you watch vampire movies or something. I don't know if it's even vampire movies. Maybe, I don't know. Like, if you ever watched any kind of vampire movie and as soon as, like, the vampire goes out and he faces sunlight, he just turns to ash? That's what happened. If you were close to that blast, you were instantly incinerated. Instantly. The first atomic bomb that we dropped was on Hiroshima. That was the atomic bomb, the first one. It destroyed, I mean, totally destroyed everything. The Emperor Hirohito, the people are calling him up and they're saying, "What? We gotta surrender. Look what they just did. Look what they did." And Hirohito is saying, "No, I'm not gonna surrender. I refuse to surrender." So America calls him up and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna drop another one. Don't make me drop this next bomb. You better surrender. If you don't surrender by X amount of whatever, I'm going to drop the second one." And so Hirohito refused to surrender still, even though they had people that were saying, "Please, please, please, please." And so we dropped a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. And so we dropped 2 nuclear weapons, nuclear explosions, atomic blasts that were outrageous on 2 places in Japan. Japan's not even big. I mean, it's really not that big. You know, when people, like my kids, oh my gosh, they're terrible at geography. But, you know, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, Japan's huge." I'm like, "That's China." Yeah. But really, so they had 2 atomic weapons that were dropped on this country. And after the second one, Hirohito said, I surrender. And once Hirohito surrendered, once that second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, they had two places, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan surrendered and the war was over. Over. So, let me take a sip of my drink because I got really excited about that. This is why my husband doesn't like to take me to the D-Day Museum in New Orleans. I don't live there anymore, so I can't go and constantly, go. He said I would harass people because I would challenge them. They would say something, be like, that's not what happened. And he said, this is why I can't take you anywhere. So, but yeah, I used to love to go. And it never did throw me out. Never. Because I would go and I'd get upset, and I'd start arguing with somebody that was there. And then I would run off to a different section so they couldn't find me. And my husband's like, what did you do now? So, but I don't live in vicinity anymore, or I'd probably be thrown out. Probably have like my picture on the door. Don't let this woman enter. Lunatic. So, okay. So now, it's after World War II, it's over, and so FDR is dead. Because remember, like I said, he died in his fourth term with his girlfriend while Eleanor was out doing his job. A new president comes in, and his name was Dwight Eisenhower. It was Dwight Eisenhower who said, drop the bomb. That's who said it, not FDR, because he was already gone. Now, Louisiana at this time, we had, and I'm looking directly at your test. So this Smart Show is pretty important. Excuse me. So I'm looking here. Oh, and I did talk in one of your questions, and going back, I have to go back a little bit, was the Lee Street riot, because that's going to be a question on your test. And what the Lee Street riot was, it was over the segregation of the troops, kind of in a way, because military police arrested an African-American military soldier in the black section of the black business district of Lee Street. Like, there was still segregation. So this soldier, an American soldier who was fighting for America at this time in this war, he's arrested by police in the section where he was segregated to belong. Now, I don't know the details of the case. It could be extenuating circumstances. I don't know. But because he was arrested in the quote-unquote black business district, and he was, an African American, there was a huge riot that came out of this and said, hey, you can't arrest him for something. Like I said, I don't know the details of the case. You cannot arrest this guy. He's where he's supposed to be. This is where you told him to be, and you're going to arrest him. So you had a lot of outpouring for that, and it became known as the Lee Street riot. That's a question on your test, and I had to kind of go back. But that was before the war ended, okay? And I just love this. This is one of my favorite posters. I used to have one in my classroom when I had a brick and mortar classroom, the We Can Do It poster. And I'll tell you why I like it in class, I guess. Well, I mean, I don't want to make this any longer than it already is. So, okay. So after World War II, Jimmy Davis becomes the governor of Louisiana. Now, Jimmy Davis is pretty famous as far as Louisiana goes. I mean, he's not like, I don't know, big time Clark Gable or whatever. But he is, he's in some little movies. He sings songs. He does these things. And he's the governor of Louisiana. Now, in the very beginning of Jimmy Davis's role as governor, he was not here. He was out pursuing his career. He was taking a page out of Huey Long's book and saying, listen, if Huey Long could be senator and, governor of Louisiana at the same time, why can't I be an actor and a singer and governor at the same time? Well, he was not Huey Long, and he didn't have the pull that Huey Long had to make people do his bidding for him. So eventually Louisiana was like, where's our governor? Where is he? Oh, he's singing a song over in Hollywood, or he's doing that. So once that became known and people were starting to look for him and be like, where's Jimmy? He said, okay, I'm coming back. And when he did come back and he started focusing on Louisiana, he did a lot of good for Louisiana. And some of the things that he did, that we have in our textbook that you're going to be asked about, was that he raised teachers' salaries That's always good. He increased the state's spending on education, which is another great thing. He created the first retirement system for state employees. He built new hospitals for inmates in Angola prison. He built a new charity hospital in Shreveport. He supervised state spending so that he left a $45 million surplus in the treasury. So he left the state when he was no longer governor. He left the state with a surplus, meaning more money. We were no longer in debt. Huey Long put us hugely in debt. But when Jimmy Davis came along, he got us out of that debt. And not only did he get us out of that debt, but he got us out of that debt with more money, which was really good. So that is all that I have for you today. Yes, that's all I have for you to do today. Make sure that you also don't forget that you are going to be asked some vocabulary words on this test. These are the vocabulary words that are on page 341. So be sure that you have those as well. They are amphibious, curtail, internment, maneuver, neutrality, objective, quota, ration, and specialized, but they're also in your guided notes, so make sure that you do those. So that's all I got for you guys today. Have a great day. I will see you in class. Bye. Oh, here's your code word. I almost forgot. So here's your code word. Don't forget to put that in. Remember, it's the Miss Myers Show code word, not the exit ticket code word. Adios. Bye.
America goes to war. Men of the Army, Navy, and Marines reinforce the battlefronts on 6 continents to save the homes and ideals of free men from Axis domination. In Ireland, United States fighting men who have safely crossed the submarine-infested Atlantic strengthen their ever-increasing ranks. Yanks on the march on Irish sod. The worldwide conflict brings intrepid American airmen to China's heroic fighting front. General Chennault, United States Air Force chief in China, flies with his brave command to strike effective blows at the invading Japs. Later, with Colonel Scott, he observes his men in action. 10,000 miles from home, men and supplies pour in through India, the last doorway to China. Cheerful yet determined, welcome strangers in a strange land. Off the coast of Alaska, jutting sharply into the Pacific and the slate-gray Bering Sea, lie the bleak Aleutian Islands. Here, Jap airmen bomb American soil and ships. Here, our defenders seek the enemy, determined to drive him from American shores. Destroyers guard transports and cargo ships to land troops and supplies on a fog-swept island near the enemy-held Kiska. Men, stores, and ammunition pour in for the Battle of the Aleutians, a battle that Americans must win. American naval guns open up on the Jap-held Solomon Islands. At Guadalcanal, United States Marines in a swift, surprise invasion add new glories to the fighting career of their illustrious corps. The retreating Japs attempt to destroy their newly completed air base. It is quickly captured by the Leathernecks and renamed Henderson Field. The Marines, later reinforced by Army troops, battle fiercely to hold their ground. Some of the enemy escape in a hurry. Others get out of the fight as prisoners. History recorded as it happened. The Marines are the first to raise the American flag on enemy territory. Seeking out and blasting Hitler's U-boats is the rough, tough job of naval aviators and men of the Coast Guard. Hundreds of ships, including vitally needed tankers, are hit, burned, and sunk, victims of prowling enemy submarines. American waters become a battlefront. In the Caribbean, more ships run foul the enemy fire, but greater combat action gets results as convoys steam through to their destinations. Russia meets the grim test. Despite repeated attacks by crushing panzer units, pushing on desperately toward the Caucasus and into the streets of Stalingrad, Marshal Semyon Timoshenko's relentless armies take a terrific toll of the enemy and upset his invasion timetable. The Russians meet the Nazis in close and often hand-to-hand fighting. A German sniper is picked off by a Soviet sharpshooter. Another Nazi tries to surrender, but too late. Britain's Prime Minister flies to Moscow. Eyes and ears the world over are focused on a conference of historic importance. Churchill meets Stalin behind the walled fortress of the Kremlin. Rio de Janeiro, nerve center of the largest country in South America, is the scene of a history-making demonstration. All-out war is declared as a result of the ruthless Axis attacks on Brazilian ships and an appalling loss of lives. Brazil goes to war.
Your commentator is Joe O'Brien. Here is the motion picture record released by the United States Navy of the havoc wrought by the Japs' sneak sky and sea raid on Pearl Harbor, America's mid-Pacific naval bastion. On December 7th, 1941, Japan, like its infamous Axis partners, struck first and declared war afterwards. Costly to our Navy was the loss of war vessels, airplanes, and equipment, but more costly to Japan was the effectiveness of its foul attack in immediately unifying America in its determination to fight and win the war thrust upon it, and to win the peace that will follow. The Japs copied their German masters in striking hard at airfields. Hickam Field, northwest of Honolulu, and the Ford Island Naval Plane Base were the first objectives of Japan's treachery. Scores of planes were bruised and battered by the Japs' aerial bombs. Many of these were demolished beyond repair. Direct hits were scored on hangars, and these were badly shattered. Equipment and airplane supplies were reduced to smoldering ruins. Here at the Naval Air Station is grim and positive evidence of Jap treachery. Here foul blows were struck, while Jap diplomats were talking peace in Washington. America lost 3 destroyers. Here are seen the United States destroyers Downs and Shaw as they rest on the bottom of Pearl Harbor with decks awash after Jap bombers make direct hits on their decks. First to feel the sting of Japanese steel are the USS Oklahoma and Utah, the latter a 33-year-old target ship. Accurate hits by the enemy bombers make short work of these 2 naval bulwarks. Now, with their keels practically out of water, they lie helpless wrecks and a sad reminder of cowardly strategy. To make possible a surprise attack within Pearl Harbor, the Japs built 2-man submarines to enable them to fire sneak blows within waters that are narrow and tortuous. Several of these surprise weapons were blown from the water by direct hits of our naval gunners. Others were beached and captured. While sky and sea fire was still raging, salvage crews inspected our naval craft to estimate what may be saved. Before the din of bursting bombs had been silenced, preparations were underway to salvage these 2 warships. At low tide, the huge propeller of the Oklahoma, stilled by the enemy, was high above water. It is believed that the small two-man Jap submarines carrying dual torpedo tubes were responsible for these two losses to our Pacific Fleet. Here is the actual bombing of the mighty USS Arizona by Jap planes. These pictures were made by a fearless cameraman who thought nothing of his personal safety to make possible this record for all posterity. A single lucky hit was responsible for the disaster that befell the Arizona when a Jap bomb falling directly through one of the battleship's funnels exploded in the engine room and set ablaze tons of fuel oil. Dense black smoke billowed to the sky as the massive control tower began to keel over. The Arizona's courageous crew stuck to its guns until the very end. Here was displayed heroism that will live forever in the glorious annals and traditions of the American Navy. The once mighty Arizona now rests on Pearl Harbor's muddy bottom, a pitiful relic of its former self, a grim monument to the treachery of Japan. The once mighty dreadnought's armor plate is twisted and torn, but the great battleship's control tower still stands, a defiant beacon that in days to come will cast its shadow upon Nippon's very shores. At Pearl Harbor, at Hickam Field, in the bomb-pocked streets of Honolulu, ever is written history. History with a tragic, treacherous pen. History that 130 million Americans will never forget. And in days to come, the Japs, too, will remember Pearl Harbor. Here is a tragic, unforgettable page in the annals of America. Here, the cunning deceit of the Japs will never be forgotten. Here, they hoped to score a knockout before the war began. The Arizona's gun crews, battered and broken, fired to the last. Their guns pointed skyward, from whence the enemy appeared. The Jap sneak blow cost hundreds of military and civilian lives. The treacherous attack cost our Pacific Fleet 2 battleships outright, another capsized, the loss of 3 destroyers and a mine layer. While bombs were still bursting and flames still pouring from our shattered naval craft, a light United States cruiser valiantly moves out to join the fleet and avenge Pearl Harbor.